Today from the global lane, a new humanitarian crisis in Syria. Israel steps in. Justice on trial and a grilling of the Deputy Attorney General on Capitol Hill. Pastor Aubrey joins us with insights on Trump's Supreme Court pick and immigration. More craziness on campus. This time, Berkeley helps students learn how to escape an ICE raid. And Maricopa College bans dangerous speech. And I'll drive it home about the absurdity of abolishing ICE. And it's all right here, right now, from the global lane. Where in the world? Syria, where a new humanitarian crisis has occurred as a result of a new battle. Syrian government troops took on rebel fighters, many from the al-Nusra group in the area of Daara. Daara is south of Damascus, near the Jordanian border. It's not far from the Golan Heights. As a result, internally displaced people, tens of thousands of Syrians, have fled the fighting. They've set up tents in the border region, and the United Nations says they're in desperate need of help. A country many Syrians have long considered to be their enemy, Israel, is stepping in to provide relief. Chris Mitchell brings us that story.
The fighting centered on the southern city of Daara, where Syrian troops pounded rebel positions. The offensive combined Syrian ground troops with Russian air power to regain control of southwestern Syria along the Israeli and Jordanian borders. That's an area that recently had been part of a U.S.-backed truce. The fighting created a humanitarian crisis in southern Syria. The UN estimates 160,000 Syrians have been displaced by the conflict. This drone footage shows the camp set up to house these people. This activist called the conditions deplorable. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the crisis at his weekly cabinet meeting.
With regards to southern Syria, we will continue to defend our borders. We will extend humanitarian assistance as much as we can. We will not allow entry to our territory.
Following the fighting next to its border, the IDF deployed more troops to the Golan Heights and reinforced their current positions with additional armor and artillery. In addition to increasing its military presence, the IDF launched a humanitarian operation to assist Syrians caught in the fighting. In a nighttime operation, they provided 60 tons of aid to displaced Syrians. The aid included tons of food, baby food, clothing, and shoes sent to an undisclosed location in the Golan Heights. The IDF also provided emergency medical care to a number of Syrians wounded in the fighting, including some children whose parents had been killed. IDF medical personnel provided life-saving medical treatment, and some were transferred to Israeli hospitals for further medical care. The humanitarian aid is part of Israel's Good Neighbor policy, where they have treated thousands of Syrians for years during the Syrian civil war. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
With all the news about immigration and the Supreme Court in recent days, you may have missed some big political fireworks on Capitol Hill. FBI Director Christopher Wray and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein appeared before members of the House Judiciary Committee. It was a contentious hearing as Rosenstein defended his actions before hostile Republicans. Now, Republicans claim he was not cooperating with their document requests. Some congressmen accused Rosenstein of intentionally hiding facts in both the Hillary Clinton email and Trump-Russia investigations. Well, we're giving you a look at some of the more compelling moments so you might gain a better understanding of just what's going on here. First, Congressman Jim Jordan. He asked Rosenstein about document redactions and DOJ surveillance of members of Congress. Then we'll hear from Congressman Gowdy and Democrat Jerry Nadler.
I'm the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. Okay? I'm not the person doing the redacting. I'm responsible for responding to your concerns as I have. I have a team with me, sir. It's just a fraction of the team that's doing this work, and whenever you brought issues to my attention, I have taken appropriate steps to remedy them.
It's not personal. We just want the information. Why did you tell Peter Strzok not to enter our questions yesterday?
Mr. Jordan, I appreciate your sincere concerns, but I didn't give Peter Strzok any instructions. If there was some problem with the instructions he had, I'll be happy to look into it.
Not what his left eye lawyer said.
Mr. Jordan, when you find some problem with a production or with questions, it doesn't mean that I'm personally trying to conceal something from you.
Did you threaten staffers on the House Intelligence Committee? Media reports indicate you did.
Media reports are mistaken.
Sometimes, but this is what they said. Having the nation's #1 law enforcement officer threatened to subpoena your calls and emails is downright chilling. Did you threaten to subpoena their calls and emails?
No, sir, and there's no way to subpoena phone calls.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying. I'm reading what the press said.
I would suggest that you not rely on what the press says, sir.
Well, I didn't ask if there's no way to do it. I asked if you said it.
If I said what?
What I just read you.
No, I did not.
Well, now who are we supposed to believe? Staff members who we've worked with, who've never misled us, or you guys, who we've caught hiding information from us, who tell a witness not to answer our questions? Who are we supposed to believe?
Thank you for making clear it's not personal, Mr. Jordan.
If you have evidence that this president acted inappropriately, present it to the American people. Whatever you got, finish it the hell up.
Today we meet so that the majority can criticize the Deputy Attorney General to his face, largely about his failure to produce documents that you know he cannot produce.
The Justice Department has already turned over 800,000 documents, and now, under threat of contempt of Congress, Rosenstein says the DOJ will turn over more. For Republicans, the issue is the withholding of key communications and DOJ's redacting of critical information. They say Congress received more insights from the Inspector General's report than from the requested documents received from the DOJ. Listen to this exchange between Congressman Ron DeSantis and Rosenstein about text messages between FBI lead investigator Peter Strzok and lawyer Lisa Page.
Mr. Rosenstein, August 8th, 2016, text message in the IG report from Lisa Page to Peter Strzok. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? Peter Strzok responds, no, he's not. We'll stop it. Now, the Justice Department had previously provided text messages from that date. They included all the messages we now have except the "we'll stop it" text message. Why didn't the Justice Department produce that to Congress when we asked?
I want to assure you and the American people, we're not withholding anything embarrassing. The message was not in the original material that the Inspector General, he found these messages?
Right, so you guys didn't find it, and he did. And so we're asking you to produce stuff, and obviously, we're expecting a good faith effort. You guys didn't find it, and maybe somebody else deleted or something happened before you guys, but he was able to find it and you didn't. So it was very disappointing to see that text message there, because I think you would agree. Just think of the timeline here. You have Peter Strzok. He opens up the counterintelligence investigation against Trump's campaign at the end of July. Then a week later, this text message, he ain't going to be president, we'll stop it. Then the next week, the infamous insurance policy text message where he says, we can't take the risk of a Trump presidency, you need an insurance policy. The American people see that. Doesn't that undermine the whole integrity of the actions of people like Peter Strzok?
Yes, Congressman, that obviously is highly inappropriate. And
well, it's more than that, though. It's more than that. I mean, the Inspector General did find that the bias affected. He didn't say it affected the decision about Hillary, but he said once we got into the fall, when you had the Huma Abedin emails and there was slow walking on that by Peter Strzok, he was really concerned with pursuing this collusion investigation. And he testified on the record that it was absolutely reasonable to say that the bias not only existed, but affected what he did.
And Congressman Louis Gohmert wanted to know about FISA warrants. Those are the foreign intelligence surveillance warrants obtained by the FBI so agents could listen in on the phone calls of Trump campaign officials. Now, Gohmert wanted to know if the Deputy Attorney General knew the FISA warrants were based on unverified evidence and a politically motivated fake dossier.
When you approve a FISA application, in your mind, does that mean you should read it and understand what's part of it?
You should certainly understand what's part of it, sir.
But you're parsing words, so that doesn't mean you need to read it, in your opinion. Is that correct?
It depends on the circumstances, sir, and...
well, telling you, being a former felony state judge,
yes.
If I had somebody like you come before me, and now it was revealed later that the guy that signed and approved an application for a warrant had not even read the application that would allow spying on somebody, I would look at everything he signed from then on with a jaundiced eye. You said earlier Bruce Orr was not working on the Russia investigation. Let me ask you, here's
my knowledge.
To your knowledge, did you not know that Bruce Orr was meeting with Christopher Steele getting the information about the dossier and supplying that information to the FBI. At the same time, his wife Nellie was working for Fusion GPS that was helping Hillary Clinton. Did you not know he was doing that for the FBI?
Correct.
You did not know that?
Correct. I completely understand your concern. And this FISA process is being reviewed by the Inspector General. If he finds some problem with it, I'll respect that. Now, we don't talk about FISAs. It's illegal for us to talk about FISAs. In this particular example, as a result of the Intelligence Committee, certain information was declassified, and so I'm comfortable talking about that. You have to understand in context, sir, that the department had made the decision to disclose the existence of a FISA to the House and Senate before I got there. Now, what I signed was what's called a renewal application. Already been approved 3 different times by a federal judge. It was signed under oath by an FBI agent who attested that it was true and correct. Now, if he was wrong, we'll hold him accountable.
Americans can expect more contentious hearings before the midterm election this November. Republicans want to use the documents, text messages, and emails they receive to prove the special counsel's Russian investigation has been faulty from the start, that it is politically motivated, based on unverified information and illegally obtained warrants. They also say evidence proves bias against Donald Trump by lead FBI investigator Peter Strzok and perhaps others at the FBI and Department of Justice. So why should you care? Well, most people agree our top law enforcement agencies, the Department of Justice and FBI, must remain objective, neutral when conducting investigations. Politics have no place in these institutions. Their integrity depends on it. That's how we know our justice is just. Remember the words of Sergeant Joe Friday from the 1950s and 60s TV show Dragnet? Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. Joining us is Pastor Aubrey Shines. Pastor Shines heads up Glory to Glory Ministries out of Temple Terrace, Florida, and he's actively serving with various organizations that engage with and promote family and spirituality in American society and culture. Pastor Shines, thanks so much for joining us today. So everyone is talking about President Trump's upcoming decision about the U.S. Supreme Court, who he'll appoint to fill Justice Kennedy's vacancy. So who would you like to see him appoint? Any favorites?
Oh, well, listen, I'm a big fan of the federal list that's already out there. And I was pleasantly, very, very not surprised, but very happy with Gorsuch's, nomination and elevation to the Supreme Court. So I believe, Gary, anyone on that list actually would give us the proper perspective, not from the right or from the left, but just someone who is going to adhere to the Constitution and not become an activist, as we have seen so often in our federal system, and just put a guy or girl in office there as a Supreme Court judge to make sure that those of us that have views, have rights, especially state rights, that we are acknowledged. And I believe thus far, this president has done an excellent job at doing so, not just on the Supreme Court level, but also on the federal level as well. So I think he's going to make a pretty good choice here. I really do.
Well, he says he's narrowed it down to 5 candidates now, and 2 women are on that list. And everyone seems to think maybe Amy Coney Barrett is on that list. And I know that many evangelical Christians support her. How about you?
Yeah, I do too. I like her. But listen, I'm also a Senator Lee kind of a guy as well out of Utah. I think he would do a fantastic job. I'm not sure if he's on the list. That list hasn't been revealed. You know, when I traveled for Mr. Trump then prior to his presidency, maybe that should have been a question that I would have and should have asked him. I had the opportunity to do so. Never crossed my mind. He had given all of us his word that he was going to appoint constitutionalists. And thus far, again, he's done so. So I think there's some really just fantastic guys and girls on that list. Gary, listen, any one of those 5 or 7, whatever that list is currently, I think we're going to do well in the evangelical community. I do. Again, he's proven to be some president, in my opinion, that has kept his word on everything thus far that he has said. So I'm looking forward to this pick.
How about the importance of abortion? I know the left is making this all about abortion because they don't want to see Roe versus Wade overturned. How important is that? I think evangelicals look at more than just that. as issues they're concerned with. How about you?
I do too. I do. I think we have a plethora of ideas that are out there for sure. But to pretend that that's not important, listen, and I said this not too long ago on Fox News on the Laura show there. Here's the reality. The abortion issue is very important, not just for a part of America, but for all America. And I don't think a lot of people, Gary, really realize that this whole idea of Planned Parenthood really kind of stemmed out of Margaret Sanger. She was a racist, didn't believe that any other ethnic group other than hers had a right to survive and live. And her real target was anyone that was not of her descent. And so a lot of people, Gary, don't even have a clue to that every time that they vote for a guy or girl that adheres to this what I call Planned Parenthood tragedy, what really goes on in a nutshell is that we're seeing 20+ million just blacks alone since Roe v. Wade, and to overturn that and or put it to the states, allow the states to begin to decide, I think you'll begin to see a shift as never before on this issue, and we can stop finally the genocide that has really, really just been tragic, in my opinion.
A lot of those abortion clinics are in black neighborhoods. So why is it that African Americans don't just seem to grasp that this is against them?
Gary, I put out a video. I'm not sure if you guys saw it. I actually gave the video over to a super PAC group during the election. It went into 60 million homes. On that video, I kind of had a chronology of where this idea come from. And here's the sad part. Most blacks had zero clue as to the etymology of this word, and that is abortion. They had no clue. They didn't know that it came from this white racist. They didn't know how it impacted their community. And what we found in this video when we began to share it with pastors and bishops across the country was that they didn't have a clue. They didn't know that this was something that was designed to destroy an entire ethnic group. And so with that being said, we began to share this, and the eyes that began to open, it was beyond your imagination. And it goes back to, in my opinion, the heart of your question, which I believe is this. When people begin to realize the history of abortion, its real objective, all of a sudden, they begin to have a change of heart and a change of mind. And I'm appalled personally that my tax dollars have ever gone to do something that I just have, I'm incensed by it, to be very, very candid with you, that I would have to pay for someone to do something of this magnitude. I believe, Gary, once that information is out there, I believe there's a change of heart and mind. And we saw that, by the way, in the election in 2016.
On another subject, we saw recently a number of protests around the country against the president's immigration policy.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Is Donald Trump pursuing the right course of action?
Oh, absolutely. I was on a show very recently, and I shouldn't have done this, but I really enjoyed doing this, and it's just a pure confession. I actually quoted Barack Hussein Obama in his book, The Audacity of Hope, and I attributed, however, that quote to Donald Trump. And the left group that I was on, a radio show that I was on, they were, oh my God, what a racist. I said, that's interesting, because I'm actually quoting Barack Obama in one of his paragraphs when he said, and I can still quote this thing, he said, look, with illegal immigration, it begins to destroy the safety net that has already been generated for people that are already here in this country. We're giving those actual statistics showing that these are not just jobs that, quote, what you hear from the pendulum when it swings somewhere else is that, well, these are jobs that Americans don't want. That's just not true. These are factory jobs. These are construction jobs. And again, primarily here in America, these are the same jobs that blacks overall would at some point had a majority in. And so once we begin to share those facts and those statistics with these various groups, especially the poor blacks that are here, they begin to echo our position. I believe it was Pew that recently came out showing that the majority of blacks in America actually support the president's position in building a wall. Why? They understand the economic impact that illegals that are here has on them specifically. And when that message is conveyed, Gary, we're seeing just, again, this exodus away from what I call the plantation of the Democratic Party and everything that it stands for. We're very vocal on this issue here. This is why we are supporting this president. And again, Gary, this is why the majority of the blacks in this country support this president, even as it relates to the immigration issue.
Around the country, leftist protesters are demanding that the U.S. government do away with ICE, immigration and customs enforcement. And now the University of California, Berkeley is providing students with resources to prepare them for possible ICE encounters. Well, here to set us straight is Alexandra Knowles. She's Youth Leadership Coordinator of the Leadership Institute at Campus Reform. Alexandra, tell us, so what is this all about? A publicly funded institution now warning and preparing students for potential ICE raids?
Yeah, so we're seeing at UC Berkeley, the administration at this school giving preferential treatment to illegal immigrants. And what they're doing is they have set up multiple programs and policies on campus that allow these immigrants to really circumvent federal authorities. They set up an ICE hotline so students can call in and report any sightings of ICE on campus. They set up legal services exclusively for illegal immigrants. And it's really just telling their students, if you don't like a law, you can just ignore it.
If they have an ICE hotline where they can warn other students about ICE raids, isn't that illegal against the law?
No, one would think, but clearly these universities believe that they are above the law. We're seeing across the country at Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, schools giving preferential treatment to these illegal immigrants. It's not just at liberal schools like Berkeley. Look across the country at a school like Rutgers in New Jersey, where they're having their very first illegal immigrant-only activity fair, where they're providing students with opportunities that they're not affording to other students, and it's just not fair.
Well, should their federal funding be pulled? I know that President Trump has warned against this.
Yes, Trump has talked about this quite a lot. I personally believe that their federal funding should be pulled. If you are not willing to comply with federal law, if you are going to foster this environment where your students are fearing federal authorities, you should not have the right to educate these students.
Well, I understand Berkeley also, as you had mentioned, they give millions of dollars in financial aid to illegal immigrants. So tell us about that.
Yeah, they are giving millions of dollars in financial aid to these illegal immigrants. They've actually set up a program explicitly for illegal immigrants, providing them with $1 million in financial aid that is exclusively afforded to these students and not to law-abiding American citizens who are trying to get into UC Berkeley. Students are outraged, and rightfully so. Like I said, this is not just happening at predominantly liberal universities like UC Berkeley. We're seeing this at college campuses all across the country, whether they're a border state or not. And it's very upsetting to students. Some students are working every night trying to afford their tuition. Their parents have completely emptied their bank accounts to send them to college. And when a university ignores all of these factors and seems to give some special incentives to students who are here illegally, it just isn't fair.
On another matter, Alexandra, some more anti-free speech craziness on campus. This time, a workshop coming this fall about counteracting dangerous speech at Maricopa Community College. Tell us about that one.
So they're putting on a 2-day training at Maricopa Community College out in Arizona. And what the university administration is doing is incentivizing faculty and students alike to come out to this training to learn how to identify and ultimately combat, quote unquote, dangerous speech on these college campuses. And how they found out about what dangerous speech is, well, it's from one professor in particular who wrote a 5-page manifesto explaining exactly what she believes to be dangerous speech. It's completely subjective and just shows that we cannot trust these universities to be unbiased in how they tackle free speech and speech on campuses.
What are some of the things that they consider dangerous speech? I mean, as you say, it's subjective. Would it be maybe someone talking about making America great again? Would that be considered dangerous?
Honestly, it has yet to be seen exactly what they believe to be dangerous speech, and that's the fear of it. Students could be walking around on campus and they could be living in fear that anything they say, if one person takes it the wrong way and perceives it to be dangerous, that could completely derail their academic career. But specifically, this professor says that dangerous speech is any speech that incites violence on campus. So it's pretty ironic given the violence we've seen coming from the left, like Maxine Waters and her comments calling for verbal assault against members of the Trump administration. It's really disgraceful, and that rhetoric is being echoed on our college campuses.
But I kind of doubt that Maxine Waters would be accused of dangerous speech on Maricopa College campus, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how the administration will respond to Maxine Waters, who has openly incited violence, called for violence against our public officials. It'd be interesting to see if they would welcome her with open arms on campus.
Of course, I'm sure Maxine Waters would say, no, it isn't violence. I'm advocating just harassment of Trump supporters and Trump people.
Well, verbal harassment is harassment, and that is assault under the law. So she should not be saying those things. It's wildly inappropriate, and it's not something we want seen echoed on these college campuses. But unfortunately, at Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, we're reporting on this every single day.
Okay, and I know you and Campus Reform are staying on top of all of this. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about some more craziness when the new semester begins at American colleges and universities this fall. So, Alexandra Knowles, we thank you so much for joining us. The Abolish ICE movement has gone too far. Americans believe in free speech, but this act at the Statue of Liberty in New York endangered the lives of law enforcement officers and the protesters. They were protesting U.S. immigration policy and even scaled the statue to make their point. It took 3 hours to get this woman safely down from the statue. But what's the point of this movement? Abolish ICE? It's a call that we've heard for the past month or so. It was even made by New York congressional candidate, socialist Alexandria Cortez. So tell me, ICE abolishers, what do you think would happen if we did away with immigration and customs enforcement? That would mean anyone, and anything could come into our country. That means guns, drugs, explosives, drug gangs, terrorists. Is that what we want? It seems to me what you're really after are open borders, no restrictions, no laws. Then what will you do when terrorists execute another 9/11 in this country, or MS-13 gangs overrun our neighborhoods? See the absurdity in this? What's next? Abolishing the police? To the Democrats leading the charge, I say this: it's a losing campaign issue. A recent Rasmussen poll found half of Americans want a merit-based immigration system, and 54% said when immigrant parents are arrested and separated from their children, the parents are to blame because they crossed the U.S. border illegally. Only radicals want ICE abolished. Most Americans just want sound immigration policy. About 20,000 ICE employees serve the people of this country every day. Most serve us honorably and well. They're tasked with enforcing the law. That includes rounding up and arresting people who remain in our country illegally. That's their job. If you don't like what they're doing, then elect members of Congress who will change the law. In America, we speak out, but we also act collectively to change what we dislike. And that happens at the ballot box. Well, that's it from the Global Lane this week. We've just finished our first year bringing you this show each week. Thank you for watching, and also be sure to follow us on Facebook, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, and Twitter. And until next time, be blessed.